Hey, what up, everybody? Adam here at the Ferment Podcast. Want to let you know a few things that are happening in our world, so I want to give you an update. Guess the first thing I need to tell you is this is the last episode of Season 1. Woohoo! We have made it an entire year, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break. We're going to have a little Selah, and this little Selah moment is going to last the month of December. So there will be no new episodes coming to you in December. But never fear, brand new episodes are coming your way in January. We already have a bunch of them recorded, and we're just going to give the whole podcast a brand new refresh. But the main thing that's going to stay the same is some of our very favorite friends from inside and outside the Vineyard are going to be sitting down with us and sharing their lives. But I guess the main thing I wanted to communicate in all of this was just how thankful I am for you guys. Thank you for listening, for everyone who downloaded, for everyone who joined us on this journey, for everyone who rated and reviewed, for everyone who shared an episode. That is such a big deal. So many of you wrote me emails this year or came up to me at events and just told me how much this podcast has meant to you. And I just want to say thank you. Thanks for letting us know. Thanks for being a part of the journey. I really, really appreciate it. When Casey and I started this little podcast, we had a feeling that it was going to be cool. Like we knew that maybe this was something that needed to happen, but we just had no idea that it was going to explode and create the community that it did. And I just want to say thank you. It's been such a journey and such a joy to work on. And I'm really, really looking forward to season 2. Okay, last thing I want to say. If you want to continue on with us in this journey in a real significant way, here's a couple things you could do to help us. One, you could just share these episodes. You've already been doing that, but maybe there's something in there that you really resonated with, or maybe there's an episode that you know might be a real blessing to someone. Hey, why not share it with them this December? The other thing you can do is you can rate and review the podcast. It helps the algorithms tick into our favor, and it just helps more people discover this little thing that we're doing, and that would be so cool. So if you were to rate, review, or share this, it would be really cool. Otherwise, again, I just want to say thank you and look out for the first Monday in January. We have a brand new season of material coming your way. All right, everybody, high fives and hugs.
Even though the producer may seem like the person in charge, they're still there to serve the artist. As a producer, I wouldn't have any records without artists. I'm recording their music and I want it to be the best that it can be. That's where the collaboration comes in. You know, if it was all me, it would sound totally different. Or if it was all them, it would sound totally different.
Yeah.
And so even the band that I record from Portland, they come because of how I produce their drums and how I produce their keys, the way that we work when he's tracking guitar and doing a guitar solo or anything like that. Like, it's about how you're working together and the stuff that you can bring as a producer that may be different that nobody thought of before.
You're listening to the Ferment Podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is Mitchell Maldonado. Mitchell is a multi-instrumentalist, record producer, and the media director at the Vineyard in Boise, Idaho. This episode is brought to you by Monk Drums. Monk Drums is a creative desert venture that strives to combine beauty and business as one heartbeat. Monk Drums' main focus is handcrafted wooden drums that allow us to love, assist, and serve all who accompany us on this path. Use the coupon code FERMENTPOD to get 5% off your Monk Drums order. Find them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Monk Drums, and every Monday look for hashtag Monk Drum Monday. Speaking from personal experience, Monk Drums are wonderfully crafted and they sound amazing. They blend the best traits of both the djembe and the cajon, and I found them to be incredibly versatile in both the live and studio environment. Check them out at monkdrums.com.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at worshipteam.com. Worshipteam.com comes preloaded with over 12,000 songs, with new songs being added all the time. Hillsong, Bethel, Vineyard, Six Steps, Jesus Culture, just to name a few. Service building with Worship Team is a snap, and all the songs are completely legal and licensed. You can also find them on social media, Facebook at worshipteam.com, Twitter at worshipteam, Instagram at worshipteam_WT. Visit them at worshipteam.com for a free trial today. Complete worship planning with thousands of songs, easy interface, mobile apps, and legal rights for your church. All you need in one place, worshipteam.com.
What up, Mitchell?
Yo.
Yo.
Hey.
Hey, welcome to Speculator New York.
Yeah, man. The Northeast.
I know we are here. It's like 10 degrees outside or something.
It's something.
And we're on a lake.
Something stupid cold like that.
I know.
I'm not ready for it yet.
Yeah, me neither. It was cool at home, and then I got off the plane and it was something else.
Yeah. I arrived here fully prepping just to be cold all the time. Like it's kind of cold back home, but it is cold here.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is right. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice you're hearing on the other microphone, that is Mitchell Maldonado.
Yes, sir.
And you're in Boise now, right?
I am. Yeah. We've been there for 3.5 years now.
Tell everybody what you do in Boise.
Yeah. So I work at the Vineyard Boise Church out there. I am the media director. So
What does that mean?
I'm in charge of a lot of different things as far as what you see, what you hear. I'm in charge of all the video announcements, videos that we create, our website, graphic design.
Dude.
Yeah, I do a lot of different hats.
Does that scratch the itch?
It does. It's actually really cool to move from just doing music to doing all that, to get to satisfy some different areas of creativity. And if I'm burnt out on making videos, I start designing something else, or I'll, whatever.
You can kind of switch back and forth.
Yeah.
Well, we'll dig into this more, but I just want to say here at the start of the podcast that you are one of those creative people in the Vineyard who does a lot of different things, which has already kind of come up here. You're designing, you do video, you do music, but like even in the music side of things, you play like all the instruments. You make records, you do some mixing. And so that's really what I want to end up talking about today. I want to talk about maybe making records, and I'd love to just have you riff with us on developing a real creative culture at your church, or like developing a making culture, creating culture, and that sort of thing, because you're one of those people who this is what you do. Is that cool? All right. But I think maybe the first thing we need to do is just start with personal history.
Man.
Where are you from?
So I am originally from Washington State.
Okay.
Southwest Washington.
Husky?
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know.
My sister went to UW up in Bothell. I don't really have a dog in the fight.
Okay.
I like.
No pun intended.
There you go. Yeah. I don't know. I've never been a college sports person, so it just doesn't. I don't know.
But you're a Dodgers person, right?
I am a Dodgers person. A huge. So.
And then are you also? Do I know you're a Portland Trailblazers person?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah. So that happens because I was born in Santa Barbara. My parents both grew up in LA. All my family's from LA.
Yeah.
And so I grew up just being a Dodgers fan.
Yeah.
That was how we were raised. But I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, so we went to Mariner games and I went to Blazers games.
That's right.
Seahawks games. Well, I never went to one, but
yeah.
Seahawks are my team, and so So Southwest Washington's where I'm from. I love it. It's gray. It's overcast. It's rainy.
It's exactly like it is today,
except like 30 degrees warmer.
That's right.
And just wet. That's all it is. Yeah. But it's honestly like a great place for making music, because you're not going to go and hang out outside and go, do all the outdoor activity stuff. You're going to stay inside and make music.
So is this why the Pacific Northwest is a music making culture?
I honestly think it is.
Do you?
I think it has a huge part to do with it. I was watching,
because it's going to be raining, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, you're going to be indoors. You're going to do stuff inside. There is stuff to do outdoors still, but for 9 months out of the year, it's gray and it's wet and it's overcast, and it makes for like really good space to just stay inside and just chill out. And I was even watching I think it was the Foo Fighters documentary for what was the traveling with Sonic Highways, and they talk about making music in different cities. Like they go to Chicago, Washington D.C., and talk about kind of the music history there.
Yeah,
and they went to Seattle, and literally one of the first lines in that episode was like, "Well, when the weather's terrible outside and you're stuck in a soundproof basement with no windows, guess you better just make some music."
That's right.
Like, this guy gets it.
Yes, he understands.
That's it. Yeah.
He understands.
Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up in the Pacific Northwest, even though you were born in California.
Correct. Yeah.
But tell me about your family. What kind of family was it?
Yeah, man. It's a fun family. my parents and I have two little sisters. I'm half Hispanic.
Okay.
I know I really look it, which for those of you just listening, I do not look Hispanic at all.
You do not.
I do not. My mom is full Finnish.
Yes.
So we have that full Finn side of that family. And then my grandpa was Spanish.
Yeah.
And then my nana was native Mexican.
Okay.
And so we're a very...
You're an eclectic tribe.
We are, man.
Wow.
And, you know, and my family's they all live in New Mexico now, my dad's side of the family.
Okay.
And New Mexican culture is kind of its own thing.
Yeah.
There's like everybody, you think of Hispanic culture of like Southern Californians and just Mexicans.
Yes.
And New Mexican's kind of its own thing, man. Its own culture down there because it's also a lot of Native Americans out there. My parents my mom's a teacher and my dad's involved in the school district. And like, I think it's something like 90% of their kids are bussed in off of the reservation out there.
Okay.
And they're all like Native Americans. They're not Mexicans like you would
Yeah, it's not the
stereotypically think.
stereotypical thought that you have in your brain.
Right. Yeah. And so that down there just brings out a whole different culture of like, and my mom being involved in these like junior high kids and getting to be a part of their lives is real cool because you get it's a whole nother culture. You go from Washington State to New Mexico is a whole nother beast.
Okay, so you come from this very diverse family lineage, and you're in the Pacific Northwest. Wow, were your parents believers?
Yeah, I grew up in the church.
Grandparents? Ish?
My grandparents were, I feel like, a lot later in life. Growing up, so my dad's side of the family, were Hispanics that were Catholic.
Yeah.
But not necessarily like going to mass all the time or anything like that. And my grandpa on my mom's side, he was actually a like real life rocket scientist. Like he worked for TRW, analyzed moon rocks and stuff like that. So he's a very scientific guy, and just an incredible person. Just, I mean, before he passed, my grandma made him write down like this little like biography thing of all of his accomplishments. And it's ridiculous. It's so cool. But he's a very scientific guy. And actually, my biological grandmother, she passed away when my mom was 18, 19, something like that, in her teens. And so actually, for a long time, my grandpa was like really pissed at God. He was really mad. And just harbored that for a long time.
Yes.
But my both my parents grew up, they kind of they were around like the Jesus movement stuff. They were involved in like Calvary Chapel early in the like 70s. So it's just kind of around the like Jesus people movement kind of stuff like that. And so they were around all that.
Did you grow up in the church though? Like
I did grow up in the church. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of church did you go to?
It was a non-denominational church, kind of leaned on the side of Pentecostal.
Yeah.
It was a good church.
Did people fall down?
You know, I don't think. I mean, I'm sure it happened. It wasn't like
that's
that.
always my favorite question. By the way,
man, I don't think it was like that extreme. It wasn't like go to town, go do all this, but definitely Holy Spirit driven, speaking in tongues. They were so down for that. That's where I learned to be a worship musician. And I started. My first time being a worship musician was me playing trumpet at the age of 14.
Trumpet,
yeah, which is
like Easter cantata, like He's risen.
Like
what was the setting? You have to tell me.
It's, man, like take a normal worship band and then throw a 14-year-old on trumpet.
Yes. Was this like a ska moment?
Not, I mean, kind of like, I guess, but it's like, it was more like they saw this kid and they're like, oh, hey, we should incorporate him into the worship team and have him do that. But we're not really going to tell him what to play. And I just kind of figured out. So sometimes I would just like play notes, like root notes along with the chords, and sometimes I would play melodies. There was one song called Let It Rise. I don't remember who wrote it, but there's this line, and they would have me sing play the melody for it, and I hit it like half the time. I would try this octave jump, and sometimes I would like, and then sometimes it would come up, you know, in front of everybody. It was great. Yeah. So,
but they let you keep doing it.
Man, they let me keep doing it.
But why were you playing trumpet? Was that because like you were playing it at the school band?
Yeah. So I started in 5th grade playing like the snare drum. And so I played the snare drum. I incorporated a little kick drum and ride cymbal in there a little bit. And then I got to 6th grade and I was like, you know what? I want to do something else too. I want something more melodic. So I picked up trumpet. And all through junior high school, I played mostly trumpet because I went to a really small school and that's what we needed. We had other percussionists. And so, I grew up being a band geek, and I played in local symphonies. I played in honor bands. I did that. All through high school.
So that's why you're kind of a utility musician now.
Yeah. Because all that, as I grew up, like I just learned different stuff as I went around. So I started with drums, picked up trumpet. I think around 15, I picked up bass. 16, I started playing guitar. 18, I started playing keys a little bit, and all of them just kind of clunking my way through as I did that. So
yeah. Okay, so trumpet was your initial foray into the worship band thing.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Did you, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how long did it take you to start playing other things? When did they say, we should let Mitchell do something else?
Probably when I was like 15, 16.
Yeah.
Because we already had a pretty solid drummer who was there for a long time. And then 16, I bought my youth pastor's guitar for like $100. I still own it to this day. And it's this crappy like Fender Dreadnought with like a Strat head on it.
Oh yes,
but
I know those guitars. Yes, I know those. I know.
But
those
it was
guitars.
great. It's the easiest guitar I've ever played. And so I learned how to chunk out some chords on that, and I would just sit all day. And then my youth pastor was like, "Hey, do you want to lead some worship?" And I was like, "Sure." I don't really know how, but let's try it. Let's do this. And so youth group was where I kind of first started leading worship. And then around that same time was when our drummer kind of moved on. I don't remember if he went to college or just stopped going to this church or whatever. But then they started having me on drums. And I got to the transition in that church where he was a loud drummer, and they had tried to do like a cage and do all this stuff. And then they're like, yeah, we're going to invest in this electronic drum set, whatever. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's not a big building. It's a smaller building.
Yes.
But they just dropped like, $2,000 on a Roland V drum set. And
man,
that's what I had to play at church for a long, long time. And it was, with the mesh heads on it. And we didn't even have the good one with the hi-hats with the two different cymbals that actually work on the stand. Yeah. It was just a rubber pad.
Yeah.
And then the mesh heads. But I mean, man, we used it, man. I actually recorded the demo for the college that I went to on that electronic kit.
Did you?
Yeah, I had a really, really crappy recording setup and just plugged the out on that into my recording thing, and those were my drums.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Those were your drum sounds.
Those were my drum sounds, man.
Bam.
Which, I mean, they're sampled drums, so they sound great.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is so funny. Yeah, these are the sort of things that if you play in church that you're going to deal with.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's, and even from a sound perspective, like I get it. It was a small church. It was like the distance between the front row and the stage is like 10 feet,
Yeah.
So if you have a guy who's just laying into it, just slamming on the drums, like it's gonna kill everybody. It's gonna slay him. But I mean, it gave me a lot of opportunity. It gave me a lot of room to grow in my playing, and we actually had the old kit. The church had the old kit still, and they let me bring it home because I didn't own a kit at the time.
Did you pay them $100 for it?
I did not. I just got to keep it for free. And when I was done and bought my own kit, they took it back. But I had that for the longest time, and I sat on a stool and a cooler for my drum throne, and that was it for the longest time. And I had it in my garage, and
that's good.
Yeah, was super loud for my parents and my neighbors, and
I love that. I love that you're just doing all this stuff in your garage. That's such a classic story.
Oh yeah, I mean, I did it all in my garage. I started a quote unquote band when I was like 17, which really we just played Relient K covers.
That's right. And what did you call yourself?
We didn't have a name.
Too bad.
We didn't do anything out of the garage. We just played. It was more of like a jam session rather than an actual band, but it was still fun. It was good.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I was in a band. Mm-hmm. The first band I was in, I played drums for as well. Yeah. We were called Georgie's Boat.
Nice. That's a good name.
Yeah. It's a decent name. We picked it up from that Stephen King novel, It.
Okay. Yeah. There you go.
We thought we were so rad.
It's so hardcore.
Yeah. Mitchell, I know that you spent some years on the road with the Neverclaim and Jeremiah.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How did you meet Jeremiah? And then how'd you like go on the road and what was that like?
Yeah. So I went away to college in super hippie college in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I actually went and got a degree in music and recording down there. And then afterwards, like right after graduation, I had an internship at a studio, did that for a little bit. And then I had to move back home to help my family with my parents' business. And so I was like the stereotypical musician, post-college graduate, living in his parents' basement.
Yeah.
So I was doing that for a while and staying home, and I had bought like a really simple recording rig. And I was just desperate to do anything music. Like I had been recording a few artists just like pretty much for free.
Yeah.
And my buddy Josh that I went to high school with, I knew every weekend he went down to Portland, which is about an hour away from where I lived. And he went down to Portland to play with this band. And I was like, well, what's this about? And so one time I just kind of tagged along and just to see what they were doing. And I initially met the guys and I was like, oh, hey, I'm Mitchell and whatever. And I really just kind of started tagging along with them with Josh. And I was just kind of teching for them on the road. I would help them set up their gear, tune their guitars, do that. And then there was one show where we had like a really inexperienced sound guy. And Jeremiah just comes up to me and like, I barely knew him at the point. He's like, hey, go tell him you're a sound guy and make sure it sounds good out there. I was like, okay, sure. Let's do that. And so I would just like, for a long time, I would just kind of tag along, kind of being the sound guy if I needed to, taking photos, teching, doing all that. And then, they say I weaseled my way into the practice, and I don't remember why I was there at the practice, but we were, for some reason I was there. I honestly don't remember why.
Yeah.
But we had this banjo that's like the banjo that's tuned like a guitar.
Yeah.
And they had bought it for some other song I think that they had on a previous record. And they were in the middle of writing a song called My Soul Longs that we had on a few of our records. And I picked up the part and just kind of started playing this little lick. And Jeremiah was like, oh, hey, what's that? Like, let's stick with that. What's that? And that I actually ended up being like the main little banjo lick on that. So then for that time, I started kind of traveling with them just locally, like Washington, Portland, stuff like that. And I was like the sound guy and the banjo guy on like one or two songs that they needed it on.
Yeah.
So like we'd go to shows, I'd go in the sound booth, I'd line check everything, I'd get them all set. And there was one, I remember we were playing amphitheater and the soundboard's right at the top.
Oh no.
And so I get everything sound checked and we were like late or something. We were in a rush. And so I get everything dialed in. The house guy's right there. I was like, okay, I got to go. He's like, where are you going? I was like, I got to play the first song. I'll be back in like, 5 minutes or whatever. So for the longest time, I would do sound, then kind of sneak my way up on stage, play one song and go. And then
come back.
Yeah. And then eventually we wrote more stuff where we needed an extra guitar, an extra keys, stuff like that. And I kind of fleshed out my role, just doing different stuff, being the auxiliary guy.
Yeah.
We worked with a producer, Paul Moak, and he was meeting us for the first time. So he wrote down everybody's names and what they do. So it was like Jared, drums, Chuck, bass, Jeremiah, lead vocals, Mitchell, everything else.
That's right.
And I was like, I like that.
That's right. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I like about the story you just told there is that this is like a shout out story for everybody who's hanging around.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you want to be in music?
Yeah.
Just start hanging around.
Be there.
Just be there.
Yeah.
Show up.
Yeah.
Start guitar teching.
Yeah.
Tune some guitars.
And even when we were in the studio as a band, like I'm still, really trying to get my foot in the door as a recorder and producer. And I would sit in on every session. Like at the time I would only play I wasn't even playing keys at the time. I would play banjo and maybe a little bit of guitar, but I was there for every single session. And my buddy Dave Getter is the one that engineered the record, and I would bug him with a million questions. I'd just be sitting there at the soundboard, and he'd hit a few buttons. I was like, wait, what'd you do to that? And he's like, oh, it's this combo. And I just ask a million questions, and that's how I learned. I was there all the time. Even when we went to Nashville and recorded, I sat in on every session because I want to see how these guys do it. I want to see their process. I want to see what they're doing. And then maybe I can there are a few times I had little lines or a little something that helped, but I was just there. You just be around it, find ways to be around it.
Yeah.
Even from my small town in Washington, somehow.
No, I really love that story because I know there are people listening to the podcast
Mhm.
and they are in music, but they want to do more in music,
Yeah.
or they know something in music, but they know there's this whole other world that they don't know,
Mhm.
especially on the recording side, because
Yeah.
it's kind of its own thing.
It is. It really is.
Like you can know front of house live stuff,
Mhm.
or you can be in a band
Yeah.
and know how to play your part.
Yeah.
But the studio thing,
It's its own thing.
it's its own thing.
beast. Yeah.
And I know that there are people who are listening to this podcast and are going, I want to live in that world, or I
Mhm.
want to do things in that world, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't really want to learn by just watching YouTube videos
Yeah.
or whatever. And that's what I love about this story. It's just show up.
Yeah, just be there. It's finding relationship with people. I mean, and Dave Getter is like a guy that I have continually talked to throughout the years, and I had questions. I mean, he's done some mastering stuff for me, and all the time I'm like, "Hey, dude, I got this. What? Like, how do you do this?" Or we even just call each other to catch up now. He's in LA doing like mixing for like TV shows now, something completely different.
Yeah.
But I'll ask him like how he's doing stuff and what he's doing, and
Yeah.
same thing. And it's just, it's really, I mean, really the music industry is like what everybody says. It's relationship, man.
Yeah.
It's just hanging around. And the concept of interning is that same concept. You're there.
Yeah.
You're helping out in little ways, but you're there. You're being there to be a resource, and just whether that resource is actually recording something or it's scrubbing the toilets or doing whatever, like
Yeah.
getting coffee, whatever it is. It's being there,
Yeah.
being around it.
Well, and I know that at least the moments that I've had
Mm-hmm.
doing music or whatever,
Mhm.
I've been around music for most of my life, but the moments that I've had in music and around music, one of the things that I've noticed, and I know there's exceptions to this rule, and this is maybe a gross generalization, but I've still found it to be true. Most people in music are really helpful.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
like even in the recording side or engineering side or whatever, there are people who know the answers.
Mhm.
And when you reach out to them,
Mhm.
they're more than willing to help.
Oh, yeah.
That's always been my experience.
Yeah, because even though you go, like, I went to recording school, I went to music school, you don't learn how to make records like that, though. Like, I learned in music school, I learned like what exactly a compressor is, like, the structure of things. I learned music theory. I learned how to run Pro Tools. I didn't learn how to talk to an artist. I didn't learn how to craft a song, how to arrange a song. I learned that from being an intern at a studio and just
Yeah.
being there and watching the guy do his thing and doing that. And so you learn from other people, from asking them questions and stuff. And it really is kind of an industry where like you don't know until you know. Like
Yeah.
there's no like handbook for being a musician and being
Well,
being
and then
in the
there's
music industry.
always the rules.
Yeah, but
You
you
know-
don't know them
You don't know them
until you break them.
and you break them. And then there's this point where you know the rules and then you break the rules on purpose.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
you start bending the rules.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is very cool because I'm sure at music production school, they taught you how to mic the drum kit.
right.
But you and I both know there's a zillion ways to
Oh,
mic
yeah.
the drum kit.
Yeah, sometimes you want to do it wrong.
Yeah.
You don't. I even just had a track where I was like, yeah, I need you to mix the drums less good. The
Yes.
drums sound too good. I don't
Yes.
want them to sound this good. This
Yes.
is textbook stuff. It sounds great. I just don't want it for this song. I just need them to sound worse.
A
And so-
little trashier.
Yeah, a little dirtier. Like sometimes that's where, and I think that's where like going to school for that kind of stuff helps, because then you kind of know some of the parameters, how it normally works, and then if you want to be weird and do your own thing, do it.
Here are the directions you can
yeah,
go.
yeah,
Well, hopefully this is not too specific for people, but one of the bands I really love is Wilco.
me too.
Yeah, I mean they're the ultimate dad rock band.
Oh yeah, I love it.
But I love Wilco. And if you listen to a Wilco record in general, by the way, they're all incredible musicians.
Yes,
Like they're just
oh my
beast
gosh,
players.
So good.
Yeah. But the drums don't sound great. They're not these massive
They're super dry.
And-
They're like,
and they're dry and they're pretty small
Yeah.
sounding.
yeah,
But when you get out of producer mode
Mm-hmm.
or drummer mode, because that's always the first thing I hear is I hear
Yeah.
drums first on a track.
Oh, me too.
I'm
Yeah.
terrible that way.
Mhm.
But when you step back from that and you just listen to the track as a whole,
Mhm.
and you just take in the song,
Yeah.
they're perfect.
yeah. It's what fits that song and that vibe.
And Jeff's vocal.
Yeah. Oh
Because
yeah.
I love Jeff's vocal, but when you think about his style, he doesn't have a huge vocal range,
Right.
You know, and he's not a power vocal.
Yeah.
He's not Whitney Houston
Mhm.
or Sam Smith or something.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
And so I think that the track was produced to fit his vocal in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Like there's some synthesis there.
Yeah. And that's what you kind of have to do. Like, I mean, I even worked with somebody like that personally. My buddy Jeff, he had done some previous recording. He's a killer guitar player, wrote some great songs, and he did one record, and all he heard from people were like, "Oh yeah, you need to get somebody else to sing this. Like, your vocals aren't good." But Bob Dylan wasn't a great singer either.
Yeah.
You know,
But there's a vibe. You have to find the vibe for the...
And I told him, I was like, we just got to make the record to center around your songs and your vocal. We don't want to produce your vocal like this guy, like this guy, like this guy. It needs to fit you. It needs to go around that. And you see it all the time. I mean, Tom Petty wasn't a great singer. Killer songs, great music.
Yeah, but and then because the production fits the band, the songs, and his vocal.
Yeah.
In a way, Petty's vocal becomes iconic.
Right, exactly.
Right?
I mean, we all remember how Bob Dylan sings.
Yeah.
Like, it's great.
But listen, I've been listening to old Dylan records again.
Yeah.
Especially young Dylan. And I adore those records.
It's great, man.
And I adore his vocals on them.
Yeah.
I love the way that he's playing and singing.
Yeah.
And it just works.
There's a certain charm to it. I mean, like I listen to Cake a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. I mean, if you listen to like some of the guitar tones, so I just saw them live for the first time, and I realized that he's getting that guitar tone through a crappy acoustic that's just like this overdriven, like whatever. It's probably thrown through some amp or something like that. But it fits the vibe. It fits his vocal where it's like that half spoken word kind of thing. Like, you know, everything's a little bit late. But it all fits, and they're phenomenal musicians. Like their aux guy, he's their trumpet player, but he's also like singing background vocals and shaking a tambourine and playing
Mitchell,
a little
that could be you.
It could be.
That could be you. You need to email them. Hey, look, if the aux guy,
I
if
gotta
he needs a
practice my
vacation,
trumpet again. I can't.
I play keys and trumpet. I can sing the high harmony.
I can't play trumpet like that anymore.
Yeah.
It's been quite some time. It's been on the shelf for a little bit, but we still have it.
Well, I love what we're talking about here, because for people who are writing songs or making things happen or are making records or anything, I think this is kind of like PhD recording philosophy of not just doing the most epic drum sounds.
Yeah.
Or not just doing the most, 64 tracks of electric guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah. That can sound great.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a vocalist who can rise above that band that you just made, well, then you end up making a record where
you have a really good backing track,
where people tell you, "Hey, this is great, but you should stop singing."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
sometimes that doesn't mean you should stop singing.
Right.
I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It doesn't mean it's not good enough.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, so I lived in Nashville for a while and worked in there, and coming from Portland and indie world out there, everybody kind of does their own thing, and you kind of create your own vibe, like you're talking about for different songs. And I didn't sense that as much out there. And I didn't love that as much, because for me, I want to meet an artist and I want to cater whatever the song is, whatever the production is, to them. And I want it to be, music should be unique. Otherwise, you're just replicating everything.
Yeah.
You're just replicating the same thing over and over and again. And whether that is just in the general market, whether that's in worship, like, it needs to be unique to who you are. And he's, anything that the Neverclaim does with Jeremiah singing is not going to sound like anything that I would sing on, or, Sarah Elmer or whatever. Like, it's not going to sound the same. You need to cater it to who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of box open to be able to just and I love experimenting in the studio. Let's try some stuff. Not everything's going to work.
Well, and just to take it back to those two singers you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Like, Jeremiah has an epic voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he can get above any band.
Yeah, he's got a range, he's got a power, he's got a little rasp to it.
Yeah. So if you're making a record with Jeremiah, we can sample lots of drums together.
Yeah, or just make it nice and
massive.
huge. Yeah.
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 And if we're dealing with Sarah Elmer,
Yeah.
she has, her voice is different than Jeremiah's, but it's similar in that she's got real power,
Yeah.
real range.
Yeah.
She sings on the note so dang good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so even that last track that Vineyard released with Sarah, it's like pop magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's one of those deals where the track production plus the vocal is, in my opinion, a perfect match.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I mean, the same example goes with like Sam Lane when he did The Difference with Bobby Hartree.
Yes.
I love the combo of the production and Sam's voice on that. Like it just fits perfectly. Like I remember listening to that record and I was like,
oh, the version of Saved this on that record? It's so cool, isn't it?
Oh, so good. And I like knowing the Anchor Sessions version of that and then the live version of that as well. From like, I love pieces of all of those.
That's right.
But like, especially in the context of this record, that version of Save was, man, it was hot.
Well, it matches his vocals.
Yeah,
in
it's
such
so
a
good.
killer way.
Yeah, and I love just how much space that Sam creates in like in his worship and in his songwriting, and it's just his singing style in general. I'm more of a minimalist kind of guy, and so I love all the space that he provides, and I'm all about it.
And this is maybe a slightly different conversation, but that is, and I don't mean to speak for someone who's not in the room, but I'm going to. Forgive me, Sam. But that's sort of Sam's, in my opinion anyway, that's sort of Sam's style in worship leading.
Yeah.
It's waiting, it's patient.
No, I had this
space.
conversation with him at the national conference when he led, and I was like, hey man, I loved this stuff. And he's like, yeah, this is what I love doing, man. It is waiting on the Lord, really.
It's
like
waiting on the wave.
Yeah.
It's waiting on Jesus. It's killer. And that set at the national conference was ridiculous.
It's so good.
Yeah, he and Michelle,
oh man,
they brought it.
Oh man. Yeah.
But they weren't forcing the song down your throat in worship.
It's one of those things where you're prepped for whatever, so you can go anywhere that you want to.
Did you play in the band that night?
No, I was mixing for the live stream.
Oh, that's right.
And so I was having my own experience back there.
That's right.
Man. It was,
that's right.
But what made it better too was because I had listened to Sam's record so much, I knew like what vocal effects to do, and I knew what part of the song was coming. So I was like, oh, he's gonna do this. He's gonna do this. I got it.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were chilling back there with my buddy Jake, and we were having our own experience back there. It was awesome, man.
That's great.
That whole room experienced something, and then back in that back room, we experienced something too. It was good.
And by the way, this is super side note. Shout out to the production team people.
Yeah.
You and Jake.
Yeah.
And Bobby.
Yeah.
We have a tiny, super informal production crew that's beginning to emerge.
Yeah.
Nationally in the Vineyard. And it just makes me really happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. And I mean, it's the job where like nobody, I mean, I tell my media guys at our church, like if you guys are doing your job right, nobody knows you're here. And you have to be okay with that. Like it's the role that you're in. Yeah. I mean, and even I tell people like I do what I do best so that others can do what they do best.
That's right.
Like our pastor isn't going to be worried about the lighting. He's not going to be worried. He can't mix. He can't do the video stuff, but he's going to get up there and teach everybody and bring it.
He does his part.
Yeah. And I want him to be able to do that the best that he can, not worry about anything else. And it was the same way like when we were touring. And in the Neverclaim, I was like kind of like the tour manager. And I know Jeremiah's thing is he's going to get up there and he kind of does like mini sermonettes in between songs, which is phenomenal. And his thing is like connecting with people and praying over people and everything like that. And I want him to be able to do that the best that he can, because I'm not going to do that. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a talker. I'm an introvert.
This has come up a few times this week, right? You're an introvert.
Like I've done so much talking this weekend, and
you're ready to curl up in a little fetal position and take a nap.
Yeah, the plane ride home is going to be me putting on my headphones and not talking to anybody at all.
Dude, there's going to be a grandma sitting next to you. She's going to be like, what's your name?
Yeah. I actually got, so I just bought the Bose headphones.
Yeah.
I actually bought those because with my in-ears, I usually wear hats, and with my in-ears, nobody can tell I have headphones in, so they try to start talking to me.
That's right.
And I put
tip.
I actually got those Bose headphones so that people know, like, I'm
not here for this.
I'm not here to talk. I'm in my own world.
Pro tip.
Yeah, exactly.
If you put the hoodie up, and keep the.
But see, I can't fit it all. I can't fit the hat, the headphones, and the hoodie. Just it all doesn't fit. But I mean,
Just put some sunglasses on.
I'm not gonna be that. I don't want to be that guy.
Sunglasses in the airplane says, I'm not talking to anyone.
Yeah. It's just we're done.
We're done with this.
Yeah. But I mean, to that point, like I'm not gonna be the guy that's doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be the guy up on stage preaching and doing all that. I'm gonna do what I do best, and I can set up all this. I can get everything ready so that all he has to do is grab a microphone and start going.
That's right.
Like and I mean, it's a prime example of the parts of the body.
That's
I mean, everybody has a different role, and that's what it is. It's not
everybody has something, but nobody has everything.
Right. And it's not that God doesn't see you in those roles and doesn't honor that and can't do awesome stuff through that. Like I have guys right now that are working in my media department that, they're guys that are just running Pro Presenter, doing some video mixing, but they're going through some hard stuff. And having that space for them to serve in our church is a huge blessing for them.
Yeah.
And even though it may seem small or it may be background-ish, it may not seem as big as like preaching a sermon, but it's still a huge deal. God's
listen, you put
stuff.
you put the wrong lyrics up on a Sunday morning.
Seriously.
We're done, right?
People will get upset. And
Spell it wrong.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's such a cool, and that's part of the cool thing about being at this church is that like I wasn't doing that before. I was in a band with 3 other dudes, and those were like my coworkers and the people that I was with all the time.
Yeah.
I wasn't leading other people, and I wasn't bringing people into a chance to use their gifts to do stuff.
Yeah, this is a new space and a new role for you.
Yeah, it is, but it's good.
Well, to that end, I want to just maybe change the conversation here and dig into some of what we were talking around before, because you are a musician and you are a producer. You were telling me this week about some of the bands you're working with, and you're excited on.
Yeah.
You said earlier this week you produced maybe one of the best tracks you've ever done.
Oh man, at least one of the best songs. Maybe not, the production's to be speculated at, but the song
you're
at its core.
hyped.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to talk about making records for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people here on the podcast and in Vineyard churches or maybe leading worship, and they're writing songs, and maybe some of those songs are beginning to touch their church, and they want to maybe document those on their own. I know in Campbellsville, we have a history of making records. So I would love to just chat with you about that. I guess we'll just start here. Mitchell, if there's some people out there and they're doing that initial creative work and they're wanting to take another step, what is that process like, or what is the next step? Like maybe the songs are written, and maybe they've done some of them at church, and they're like, I think a couple of these are maybe good enough.
Yeah.
Now what? You're a producer. Now what?
Yeah. I mean, really any record starts there with the songs. Even when we did the Heart Sound record, the live record, I mean, we did a retreat, went up in the mountains, wrote some songs, refined them, redid them, reworked them. And
can we just talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. So you took your worship and writing community.
Yeah. So
to write songs, and you wrote some, and then you said you refined them. Tell me about that. What does that mean?
Yeah. So, there was 9 of us initially from Boise, went up in the mountains. We tracked maybe 20 songs. We wrote a lot of songs that weekend. Some of them good, some of them not so good. But what we did is we actually sent them out to a bunch of people and got their opinions on them too. And even from that initial sending out, we could see what's resonating with people. What's
it's funny how if you do that, there's some sort of like built-in group intelligence, and people kind of know which songs have the juice.
Sure. And it's a super vulnerable spot to be in too, because you're putting yourself out there and say, hey, what do you honestly think? And sometimes it's gonna be like, yeah, this isn't very good.
Yeah. And
you kind of have to take that. But what that does is it gives you room to grow. Like we have one song that was pieces of different songs. We have one song that like somebody was like, yeah, I really dig the chorus on this one, but I don't like the rest of the song. I really dig the bridge on this one, but I don't like the rest of the song.
Yeah.
And so we took those best parts. I think we wrote like a whole nother verse and combined them all into one song.
Yes.
And so take the best of what you got, mash them up together.
There's no one way to do this.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we did that, and like, I mean, we probably spent a few months refining those songs
and editing.
Yeah. And editing those, because that's where it really like starts. And a good record has good songs because a song is gonna live on past the production. A good song is going to resonate with people, whether it's done with a huge band and sounding epic in a stadium, or with a person in their guitar.
Yeah.
Like that. And I love breaking stuff down back to that, because that's where you're really going to find the good songs. Those songs resonate. Like the song I was just talking about, a song called Johnny. I remember playing that with my friends in Nashville with just an acoustic guitar and a mandolin. And I was like, this song is special. There's something here.
Yeah.
And so the songs are really where it starts. And then from there, finding some kind of resource to have some way of recording it. Doesn't have to be good. My first records, they were on like an M box with 2 inputs. Like I did a whole record on that. I tracked drums. I had a kick drum and my overhead,
and that's it.
Sub-mixed down into one channel. No, I got creative. Yeah.
Okay.
So I had a little mixer in
So
my
you were
studio.
playing it over and over again.
Well, what I did was, so I had a little like rack mixer, and then the outputs of that, I had the left channel going into one channel, the right into the other. So I had kick drum and overhead into one, and then snare top and bottom, so that I can have my snare nice and poppy. But then like I just did the 2 tracks, man, and then you track the drums, make them sound the best you can.
Yes.
I had bass. It was a ska record, so I had horns and stuff like that. Yeah, it was good.
I knew there was a ska record in here somewhere.
Oh man, it was good. I mean, first record I ever produced.
Did you play any trumpet on it?
I did not. They were
What, Mitchell? That was a huge opportunity for you.
But you have the ska band. They're already doing it.
Yeah, and you say, but you need to say, I'm the producer. I'm gonna play one of the harmony notes.
Nah, see, it's actually more fun for me as a producer if the band's already like great at what they do, and I can just like work with the band.
That's great.
I don't have to do all the pieces, but it's starting somewhere. I mean, and especially what I found is if you have songs and you have them, maybe you sang them out on a Sunday a couple of times and people really love them, they're gonna love whatever you put out, whether it sounds like Bethel or Hillsong or whether it sounds like one mic in a garage.
Yeah,
like they want to hear it. And
they already have a connection with it.
Yeah, they have an emotional connection, and that's kind of why even when we did the Heartsound record, we wanted to do it live, because then our church has buy-in. They can listen to that and they're like, hey, I'm on this record. This happened at my church, and this is what's happening, and I'm in that crowd that you can hear super loud, and that's us. That's because that's the whole thing about a live record is it's about capturing the experience in the room. Yeah. And so, like it's just starting somewhere.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Maybe someone's going to record some songs and maybe somebody in the group kind of knows how to record it or whatever. Talk to me about why someone might want to find a producer and get some outside help.
So any kind of outside help is real nice because they don't have emotional attachments to the song. They just want the song to be the best that it can be. We kind of found this out in the Neverclaim. So in the early records that we did, Jeremiah was the sole songwriter. And then on our record Revival, he also produced the record. So not only did he write these songs from the Genesis, he knows all of them. He's also producing all the parts. And so suggesting any kind of change is hard because he's just got that tight emotional attachment to it.
Yeah.
And then when on our next record, he did tons of co-writing, and then we had a couple of producers, Paul Moak and Jason Ingram, work on it. And those guys just want to see the best that it can be.
Yes.
And sometimes it's just something completely out of left field. Sometimes they're going to change something way different, which is great because they haven't lived with the song for so long. They got fresh ears. They just want it to be the best that it can be. And when it's, I don't know, I feel like, and in our case, Jeremiah took the changes and the criticism so much better when it's coming from a producer who's in charge of the record rather than a bandmate who's like, hey, maybe we should change this part. And he's like, no, shut up. This is stupid.
Yes.
I mean, it's some kind of like, and with a producer, you have some kind of cohesiveness because you have one person who's helping you be in charge of everything and create that sound.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I get it. It's nice to have an outside voice sometimes, isn't it?
I mean, you get fresh ears on it. Even
someone who's an advocate for the song,
yeah,
but not necessarily for their part.
Yeah, yeah.
Or something like that.
I mean, and they're still there to serve the artist.
Yeah.
I mean, I was listening to an engineering podcast and they were saying like the intern is there to help the assistant. The assistant's there to help the engineer. The engineer's there to help the producer, and the producer is there to help the artist.
That's right.
So the artist, I mean, even though the producer may seem like the person in charge kind of, they're still there to serve the artist. You're there. I mean, as a producer, I wouldn't have any records without artists. I mean, I'm recording their music and I want it to be the best that it can be. And that's where the collaboration comes in. You know, if it was all me, it would sound totally different. Or if it was all them, it would sound totally different.
Yeah.
And so even the band that I recorded from Portland, they come because of how I produce their drums and how I produce their keys and stuff like that. And the way that we work when he's tracking guitar and doing a guitar solo or anything like that. Like it's about how you're working together and the stuff that you can bring as a producer that may be different that nobody thought of before.
That's right. So part of what I'm hearing in here as well is in order for this to go well, there needs to be some level of trust.
Yeah. And it's hard.
So the producer needs to have some buy-in and some excitement about the band, but then the band also needs to have some buy-in and trust in the producer.
Yeah. And a lot of it comes with like, previous work stuff. Like you hear, a lot of times you work with a producer because you're like, yeah, I love what he did with this record and this record. And it's the same on the producer side. Like I work with bands that I'm a fan of. I love, like I started my studio because I wanted to make records that I want to listen to. I want to continue to I don't want to just make records and then they just live on the shelves or whatever. Like I want to keep listening. I want to create music that I want to listen to over and over again. And so for me, and that's what I found myself doing in Nashville is working with stuff that I wasn't super excited about. And it's not my best stuff if I'm not excited about it. I don't have buy-in. I don't have investment. I'm not going to go the extra mile for this if I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like the quality is good, but I'm just not excited about it.
Yeah, part of what I hear there too is your Pacific Northwest indie roots are coming out.
Oh yeah,
right. Like you can take the boy out of the P&W.
Yeah,
but you cannot take the P&W out of the boy.
I am definitely more of the indie musician. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not a big pop guy.
Yeah.
I think I can appreciate good pop.
Yeah. It's not home base.
For me. It's not for me. Like even my buddy Jake in Boise, he's a killer synth player, does great pop stuff. And I know that like if somebody's looking to do that style, don't talk to me, talk to him. Because he's gonna get a better product for you because that's right up his alley.
That's his thing.
Yeah. But it's just not like, but I use him as a resource if I need to get synth tracks or anything like that.
Yeah, come on.
Killer. It's great. It's great, but it's just not my thing.
Not your deal.
And I want to do like different stuff. I want to do weird stuff. We do weird stuff where like on this last record, we went into our basement, which is right off of my studio, and had a bunch of snare drums and we're hitting the side of it with sticks, like just over and over again, just creating these weird sounds. And we're doing weird clap things. And I mean, we've done all kinds of weird stuff. I did one where I was at a buddy's studio. We all had different percussion things and stood in a circle and had a stereo mic in the middle and just let the track play. And all of us are just like trying to figure out some kind of percussion part to it.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's just this weird, like little quirky stuff in the background.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think that's the kind of stuff that makes unique records. Because if you're just following a formula or like, this is what I always do. I always do drums, bass, guitar. I always do it like this. I mic it like this. You're going to come up with the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And I want to create something new.
Yeah, I hear in your voice there and in your telling that you want to experiment.
Yeah, I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love getting weird.
Yeah.
Just doing different stuff.
Well, let me ask you another question here that kind of keys in on a couple things that you've already said. You talked about how, a record starts with the song, and you even went a bit autobiographical about the last Heart Sound record. You guys wrote the songs, and then you spent a couple months editing the songs.
Yeah.
Which can be vulnerable. There's a piece of challenge that's in that. Then we also talked about why maybe you want to hire a producer, and part of that is that the producer is an outside voice. It's not a part of the system.
Yeah,
and some of that is so the producer can add their influence, but by nature, some of that could be a challenge as well.
Yeah.
So part of what we've picked up on here is that in the course of making a record, for the people who are making that record, either the songwriters or the performers or just the people who are involved, that there could be moments of challenge.
Yeah. And even when we did that record, like I'm obviously a part of the church and I produced the record. And so I don't have quite that objectivity that I normally have, but I also did that co-producing with Jesse and Jeremiah. And so even in that context where I have other voices to help me create this, I have people who are going to challenge me on some stuff, which is great. Like, I think we should do this. I think we should build it again. They're like, yeah, I don't know. But even just second guessing that stuff, if you have people that you have that relationship with and you can do that a little bit, you get better products. Because then sometimes we try stuff. Sometimes we try something and it doesn't work. And
we can always come back.
Yeah. And maybe that idea sparks something else or whatever. And so I think the hardest part about making a record is the challenge aspect, because when you're going into making a record, you're really like creating what the song is. Because maybe before you've never played this song beyond just a few chords and your voice. And so you don't really have a direction for it. You don't have parts. You don't have anything extra like that. And so really, like, you're creating it. You're coming up with the parts. You're coming up with what it's going to sound like. Like, I mean, if you listen to John Mark's Economy, like all the slide stuff like that came because of James, and like who knows what was.
And by the way,
before.
The guitar solos on that record,
so hot.
They still are amazing.
Oh my gosh,
who is this? That track
that could be
the drumming and guitars on that track. Are
Lee's drumming and James's slide playing that made that record for me. That was so good.
Yeah.
But like, I'm sure that all that stuff evolved. I mean, you know, I've also had stuff where like we took a song called We Belong to You, and they had recorded that on a previous version, had a little different way of doing that. And I took that, and because the previous recorded version of that I wasn't involved in, so I kind of had that set of fresh ears. And we changed some of it. We changed some aspects of it. We changed some chord parts. We changed some rhythmic stuff on it. And even when we were mixing it, Carl tried some stuff and he's like, hey, I got an idea. And I was like, I mean, ultimately for that one, I was like, I don't like it. Yeah. But even just presenting those ideas when somebody else has something. I mean, it's the nature of collaboration. Somebody's going to have a different idea, and to at least be open with it is really good, because you could miss out on something.
That's right. Well, and I guess one of the reasons I wanted to talk about challenge or having people speak into a song, you know, in its genesis or in its editing phase, or speak into a track, you know, from a producer perspective. I guess one of the reasons I'm asking about this is, you know, a lot of times songwriters or musicians are a sensitive bunch. And so tell me how you handle that, or tell me what's the approach.
Oh man, I don't even know if I have a good approach to it, because I think over time it's something you kind of learn. I even had it even just as a mixing person, because what you're creating is from you. You're whether it's the writing or the mixing or whatever, it's a product of who you are in some way or another. And when somebody says they don't like it, it initially feels like they don't like you. Like,
that's a good point.
That's what it initially feels like. I mean, that's being the sensitive musician. Like, I would send out a mix and they're like, yeah, it just doesn't sound good. I was like, oh, I'm not good. Crap. And that's what it feels like. But you have to also, and this is coming from like through years of experience. Like, this didn't happen like that. It happened through like working with artists over artists over artists. And especially if somebody can offer a critique in a good way, that's super helpful. If they're just knocking the song, like, I mean, that's just gonna knock somebody down. Like, it's not helpful.
Yeah. So there's a touch that's required.
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of producing that's what it is too. Is you're working with artists. You know how to communicate with each other and how to get the best out of what they're doing. And I think that's like one thing I appreciated about Paul Moak is I think Moak.
He's a producer, by the way. In case you're listening to this, you wonder who's that guy.
Yeah, probably one of my favorite producers. And I think when we were in the studio working with him, I think he got the best out of us as musicians, and he just knows how to communicate with us, how to get the right setting, you know, get you comfortable with it. Even though his studio is like a museum, you still feel comfortable in it. You still, you know, you don't feel intimidated. You're just like, oh yeah, let's just make some music. Let's do it. And so a lot of it's just, I mean, it comes back to relationship. You're just learning how to work with somebody and how to
Yeah.
communicate back and forth. And it's just
Yeah,
all out of
I think that's a really big issue. I know that for me, if I'm leading some project with some artists or songwriters or musicians, that if I can lay out the expectations or some things that might happen on the front end, or if I can lay out the hard words up front rather than later, that also seems to be helpful.
Yeah.
So even on the songwriting thing, like we've done songwriting at our church for years. So if I tell people, hey, you're invited into this songwriting process, here's what that means. You're invited to write songs.
Yeah.
But let me just also tell you this. It doesn't mean that your song is going to necessarily make it to a record.
Sure.
It just means you're invited into this space where you can write songs with us. And if it's a great song, maybe it will be recorded, right? But it's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
So having conversations like that up front are also very, very helpful.
Yeah, you get it. You kind of get it out of the way before it becomes a problem.
That's right. And the other thing I would even do is I would tell songwriters, okay, so you're invited in the process. This doesn't mean that that there's a guarantee that your song will be on a record.
Sure.
And 3, everybody's songs will be edited.
Yeah.
So if you're going to write with us in this group in this moment or right now, for further consideration, we're going to look at them critically and we're going to edit probably because we want them to be the best.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if you don't want it to be edited, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
okay too.
We won't use the song.
Yeah.
Right. So you have a right. I have a right.
Yeah.
So I've just found like having conversations that are really plain.
Yeah.
Before there's any emotion, because what you said a moment ago is really true. Because a song comes from you, it feels like it is you.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really important distinction. Something can come from you, but not be you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it initially feels like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the feeling, I understand the feeling, but the more we can disentangle the feeling from the reality, the better chance that we have to see our art go further, to touch more people. And we don't have to be as bruised in the process.
Yeah. And even having those conversations up front versus going through that process and then having that conversation later after somebody's already like maybe feeling a little hurt about it. Like it's a lot harder.
They're so stoked.
Yeah.
They're like, they just wrote a song and they're like super
perfect.
stoked. This is perfect.
Yeah.
And they're really running off the adrenaline of finishing a song or collaborating with people. I've noticed over the years that there is an adrenaline that comes maybe this is not true for everyone, but for me, I get hyped from finishing a song.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's an accomplishment.
Yeah.
You have finished something.
If I finish a song, I have a good day.
Yeah.
I'm just buzzing all day long. Like people don't even know. I'm just walking around town. I go to my coffee shop. I get my coffee or whatever. And I'm just buzzing around Campbellsville. And I'm like, I've got this mini high.
Yeah.
No one knows why.
Yeah.
But I know it's because, I finished the song. But that emotion, unless it's properly detached, can really screw me up when it comes back to a moment where we need to edit or to put a critical eye on it, right? Because I can begin to fall in love with something in a way that isn't going to help me if I want it to go further.
And you're going to stay attached to it and you're not going to be open to anything else. And I think having those conversations on the front end is really good because I was terrible at it for a long time. I'm a pretty passive guy.
Yeah.
And
you're an Enneagram 9, right?
I am.
Yeah.
And
the 9s, they got that anger.
Oh, man.
They got the anger buried.
It's just all suppressed. It's just we don't say anything. We're just gonna be in our own heads and just be silent. But for a long season, I just didn't have those conversations, and it made it real tough. 2/3 of the way through the record, when the record's done, we're talking about publishing it. When we're talking about other stuff, and it gets real hard. And especially for me, where I don't want to have conflict, I'm just like, oh man, this is the worst.
Yeah.
And then I learned, I actually I had to sit down with Dan Wilt and I was showing him some projects and he gave me some advice. And I was like, man, I just need to be upfront with this stuff. I just straight out the gate.
Yeah.
And so now, and I've had stuff I've been screwed over in recording processes, mixing processes, whatever, or misunderstandings or whatever.
Yes.
And just to avoid any of that, I was like, no, I'm going to be real upfront. I'm going to have those conversations now. I have contracts. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this for this much money.
Yes.
We're going to work on these days from this time to this time.
Yes.
Especially once I got married too.
Yes.
I can't work from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Because my wife is never going to see me.
Well, and here's the other part too. This is maybe massively tangential, but it's also true.
Yeah.
The sort of classic musical trope that, real bands that are super creative, they're grinding in the studio at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
That's when the magic comes.
Yeah. Magic can still happen between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Dude, for me,
Yeah.
at 3 a.m., I've got nothing good.
Dude, seriously.
I
Yeah.
have nothing good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And maybe some idea comes to you, record it on a voice memo.
That's right.
It doesn't have to be in the studio. I mean, I remember when Josh was on his podcast and talking about setting those boundaries and like having hours. And I was like, yes, all of this is great. Because I've learned the hard way. I mean, I've had recording processes. I had a record right after I got married, maybe like a month after I got married. And we were in Nashville and my studio was in my apartment. So these people are in my place all day long. They leave and I'm working until I go to sleep. I wake up in the morning. First thing I do is start working. And my wife worked an hour and a half away. And it was just a rough process. And we got done with that record. And Lindsay's like, we can't do this. Like this is not how this is going to work.
And you're like, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I'm like, if I still want to be married, yes. And I've learned that. And now how the process of how we do it, it's a lot more straightforward.
Yeah.
I have boundaries. I'm like, hey, this is going to be and I record in my home. I mean, we have the recording studios in the basement of our house. Yeah. And so I'm like, I'm inviting you into our home and here's what we're going to do. We're going to work from these times. I'm going to go on a date with my wife on this night and we're going to, we got something going on Tuesday night. And so we're going to work from like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And that's when we're going to work. And after that, like we're going to do other stuff.
I'm off.
Yeah. And it also helps like just because a lot of times the people who record with me, they're staying at the house. And so like, let's just have some time where we're just hanging out. Like,
well, and that makes the work go better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Friendship makes the work go better.
Yeah. When you don't hate each other by the end of the process.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And it just creates, I mean, you can, the best records I've ever made are when you have that vibe, when you're making it with friends and you're actually enjoying the process. You're enjoying what you're doing and what you're creating and doing it together. And even though you might spend, 8 hours straight in the studio, just only throwing back coffee in a power bar, it feels good. It's what you're doing together and you're creating something great together.
Yeah. Well, I love that. That makes so much sense. And I think that'll be helpful for people. Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is like, the more we can have upfront conversations, that's better. Laying out some expectations. The art is from you, but it's not you.
Right.
Yeah. Making important distinctions like that.
And be open-handed with it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like even records that I've made, people have some different ideas and like, hey, I think it would have sounded really cool if we did this. I'm like, oh man, yeah, that would.
Yeah.
Like that would sound cool. I mean, there's songs that have been covered 50 different ways. And one's, well, I won't say all, but sometimes one's not better than the other. One's just different.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it's something creative. There's always room and creativity to do something different.
I know that in my own life, in the moments where I've been able to collaborate with some people on something, either in songwriting or collaborating in the studio and co-producing or just really sharing ideas freely, that the end project is always better.
Yeah. Yeah. It's even for me, like I look at my discography and I love the records that I've either co-produced on or like I did the songwriting process with somebody else. Like it's always involved somebody else. Those are my favorite ones where I know that like I've co-produced this with my buddy Carrie, or I've done it with Jeremiah, or whatever, like Jeremiah and Jesse. Like it's always involved somebody else because you just have, when you're working together, you each bring your strengths.
Yes.
And even I think Josh, I was talking to him this weekend, like
you're talking about Josh Ray?
Josh Ray, yeah. And so if somebody, if you're one person, you have like 2 tricks that you pull. You work with somebody else, they have 2 tricks that they pull. Together, that's 4.
Yes.
You bring in somebody else, they have 2 more tricks, that's 6.
Yes.
Like just combine your forces and you can, and especially if you find people that you can really work well with. Like Jeremiah and I have done enough records that we just know how to go. We just know what each other's thinking. We can just run with that. And same with my buddy Carrie. So if you find like you're a person that you can work with, you can get some really, really great stuff out of it.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's a huge note. Yeah, if you're listening to this, no matter where you're at in the creative process, there's a very good chance collaboration is going to help.
Yeah.
It's really going to help.
Yeah.
Yeah. This spring, we did a small songwriting retreat in New York City with just a handful of writers. There wasn't much space. And just by nature of the event, it was very collaborative.
Yeah.
And some of my favorite songs that I've ever written came in that moment.
Yeah.
But it was because like right up front, we just knew, well, okay, we're just collaborating. We're just, everybody's here to give and to take and to push and to pull. And it really created something special.
Yeah. And I had to do that. I almost am forced to do that in the songwriting process because I'm a lot better at writing like music and chords in the background, and I'm terrible at writing lyrics.
Yeah.
And so I always try to collaborate with somebody who's way better at writing lyrics. Like the song God With Us, that was actually like my own, we had like a moment of solitude, and I had this own personal experience, and we got in the songwriting session, and I told my buddy Marcus, I was like, hey, this is what happened. Like I was sitting in here and all this happened. Can we flesh that out into a song? And then he, being the lyricist that he is, wrote it all out. We made some edits. We did this. While he was writing and scribbling in his notebook, I was just messing around, playing some guitar chords. And that's how the song developed.
That's
like,
right.
It was,
so it starts with an experience you have.
Yeah.
That gets maybe distilled into an idea.
Yeah.
And then you create some sort of a sonic space.
Yeah. And I couldn't verbalize it. Like I'm sure if I sat down long enough and whatever, I could come up with something. But I know that's not my strength.
But you're explaining it to him.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then he's
putting the pen to paper and putting in creative phrases and how he's doing it. And and it was like that to me is a prime example of collaboration. Like he's not a phenom on guitar. He's not going to do anything super duper creative, but he can write melodies and can write great lyrics. And so let him do that. I'll play guitar and I'll write the chord changes and do that. And it's like one of my favorite records, especially because of that experience of like, that was a moment for me. And then it was verbalized through somebody else.
Yeah.
And then people connect, and you see the whole church connecting with it. Yeah. And when we sing it, we've sang it a couple times even afterwards. And I'm like, man, this is a cool moment where I know this personal moment that I had to myself up in the mountains is connecting with our church here.
That's right.
Yeah. It's a cool moment when that happens with the song.
Amen. Yeah. Amen. Power to the people.
Yeah.
Power to the people. Yeah. We need collaboration. Mitchell, I think we're going to have to do this again.
Yeah. I'm down.
Yeah. We didn't even get everything I wanted fleshed out. Yeah. Yeah. Let's pick this up on the road somewhere again, huh?
Yeah. We'll meet somewhere.
That's right. Hey, thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thanks for what you're doing. And thanks for, being a producer. Thanks for helping people make records.
Yeah.
People need that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Hey, before we end though, I do want to throw you the Ferment podcast question.
Yeah.
Because we have to, right? Mitchell, can you just tell all of us maybe a moment you experienced great joy?
It's going to sound a little cheesy. But man,
this is a cheese-free zone, man.
Yeah.
You can be as straight up honest as you want to be.
But my wedding day, man, I've been married, it'll be 4 years in January. And, man, I just remember that day was just, especially because like we weren't nervous. We just knew, like we had been waiting for that day just to be married. Like we were like, we're ready, let's go. And that day was just pure joy, man. I mean, we got married in Southern California. The weather ended up being perfect. Any of the details that we had for the wedding, like friends just stepped up and took care of it. And it was just nothing but a great experience, man. And it was like, and I was like, and I got to walk in my head too, being the production dude, I'm always thinking like, well, this could go wrong and this could go wrong and this could go wrong. And I just had to resign to the fact that I was like, if anything just falls apart, as long as I walk out of there married to my wife, I'm golden. If Lindsay and I walk out, then I'm good.
Yeah.
And it was just, I mean, it was a picture perfect day, man. I loved it. And
nothing went wrong?
Nothing went, well.
Come on. I mean, at every wedding, something goes crazy. There's a story. There's the wedding story, right?
The only thing that went wrong, quote unquote wrong, is
anybody fall down?
Not quite. So Jeremiah's two daughters were our flower girls.
Yes.
And Emberlyn was like, I think she was like 8 at the time, and Loveland was like 3. And our wedding was at like 11 o'clock. So it's just right in that prime, like right in between times. And Loveland started getting hungry. She started kind of getting a little cranky. And we're like probably like 15 minutes until we go. And so we're trying to keep her happy. We have like a candy bar. We're giving her candy, doing all this. And so we're going through everything, walking down the aisle. And Emberlyn comes down. She's walking with Loveland. And Emberlyn's actually throwing the flowers. And Loveland has this sign that says, "Here comes your girl."
Yeah.
And she walks down, gets all the way to the front, throws it down,
Yes.
and then just runs straight back up.
Dude, that is perfect.
It was so great. I was like,
that's perfect.
that's exactly, yeah. And
Yeah.
the best part was Lindsay never saw it for the longest time because she was still back where she was still entering. So she never saw that.
I'm sure everybody was laughing too. Though.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah,
It was
just,
so great.
It just sort of like diffuses that
yeah,
moment.
Yeah. But BG, our drummer, was videoing the whole thing. So he had it on video.
Nice.
And so like months later, we got to share it with Lindsay again when we were on the road somewhere, and I got the video from him and I got to show her, and she's like, yes, that's about right.
That's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Mitchell, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for being a producer.
Yeah.
Help these people with their songs.
Yes, sir.
All right, everybody. Hope this was helpful. And if you need some help with your tunes,
Yeah.
call Mitch.
Absolutely.
Send him an email.
I want to be a resource.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Peace.
Hey everyone, Casey Corum here, producer of the Ferment podcast. Thanks again for listening. Just wanted to remind you to check out our latest single, You're Always With Us, wherever you listen to music. Here's a few things you can do to help us. Share a link to You're Always With Us with a friend. Also subscribe to our Sing Together playlist on Spotify. This is where you'll find You're Always With Us and all of our latest singles. All right, people. See you next time. Peace.